Hello, everyone who is joining me. Thank you for joining me. If you are here live with me, if you are not here live, thanks for joining me anyway after the fact. I am thinking that I am hopefully wrapping up our critical thinking on emotional intelligence. And this is really incorporated all three of those things that you see over there: mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and wisdom as well. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I'm here in the classroom with Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit, because it takes a healthy spirit and a healthy mind to make a healthy body. And that's what I hopefully am teaching you in these classes. So thanks for joining me in the classroom. So let's get this kind of wrapped up. What I've told you is I have told you that I am giving you notes and information and knowledge from the course that I teach at Oakland University, or have taught at Oakland University. Right now we've got a lot of problems over there at Oakland University, not giving me my job, and you know, contributing so much, so many people contributing to all of the nonsense that's going on here, right? When people really do really hope to work and are not given the opportunity to do so. It really is, especially when you're a teacher, and in these times and in this climate, when you're a teacher and you are mistreated. Well, you know what? I honestly, I'm sorry, but oh, that's better. I can't think of, other than children, and most of the teachers are women, right? So, par for the course, people have really been, I do think that there has been a real attack on women in particular, a real attack. I get men feel that they've been attacked too, right? But, your job is clear. It really is. From the point of view that you feel like you've been beat up by women, I'm sorry, but your job is clear. But this is really, that's more for a philosophical classroom. Let's get back over here with our mindfulness. And that really is what we're doing here in this class on mindfulness. We are, in this mindful class, learning how to bring back a wandering attention. And the very first part of bringing back a wandering attention is to not beat yourself up for the wandering attention. Now, it really bothers me when a lot of people are just be good to yourself, be kind to yourself. We could beat ourselves up a little bit more. I do feel like we do have, a lot of self-love. And our self-esteem is typically higher than average here in this country. Let me look at what's going on here. So it really isn't void of self-love. That doesn't mean it's void of depression or anxiety either, because clearly we are not void. What I'm saying here is clearly we do have anxiety and depression, right? Clearly we do see that. But we also do have levels of self-esteem, and this contributes to our epidemic of narcissism in this country, right? And we know that we do have an epidemic of narcissism, and you probably would agree with that. So how do you reconcile, how would you reconcile this idea that we have an epidemic of narcissism, and yet we also have epidemics of anxiety and depression? How would you think about that, critically think about that in your head, that we could have both of those things, epidemics of narcissism as well as epidemics of depression and anxiety? What do you think? How is that possible? Well, you could have it. Normally in the classroom I make them answer, right? But you're muted, so I can't hear you. So normally when we are, I'll do depressed and anxious, right? When we are depressed and anxious, we can still, all right, let me do it this way, sorry. Normally when we are narcissistic, we have got to live up to a level, right? When we're narcissistic, we have unrealistic expectations of ourselves, unrealistic thoughts about ourselves, right? And others as well. So, wouldn't you think that keeping up that sort of facade that we believe that we are all that, right? Keeping that up, wouldn't you think that that would cause anxiety? Wouldn't that increase, well, anxiety that leads to feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, which lead to depression? So, wouldn't you think that living up to the bar, if you were narcissistic, living up to that kind of, self image, wouldn't that cause anxiety and eventually then cause depression because you couldn't live up to it, right? So what I'm saying is you need to reconcile how you can have both of them at the same time. How can you be a narcissist and be depressed and anxious, right? So that's what we're doing. We're critically breaking things down. So often we've been taught that information comes instantaneously, that we begin to think that it comes also instantaneously in our own brains. And it simply does not. When somebody says, when somebody's, I've said this before, when somebody's on the heels of interrupting you, I know what you're going to say. No, they don't. No, they don't know what you're going to say, number one. And number two, they haven't had time to even think about what you're going to, so they haven't heard what you're going to say, nor have they even given time to think about that. Thinking takes time. When somebody is jumping on the heels of whatever you're saying, the one thing you know is that they didn't take the time to think about what you said. Okay? All right, so I want you to take the time because thinking takes time. So take the time to think about how it is that you can have these disparate, right? So these opposites. How could you have these opposites in our emotions and have them both exist at the same time? Or what appears to be opposites. How can they both exist at the same time? Okay? All right. Now, we have talked a lot about what mindfulness is and the practices of mindfulness and the purpose of those practices. And then we've talked a lot about the branches of emotional intelligence. And what we were left with talking about was ratings, right? So I just gave you some examples of different kinds of, yesterday, I gave you some examples of different kinds of pictures that might be emotional pictures to help you think about what might be the emotion you are experiencing when you look at that picture, right? So when you're looking at the picture there up in the right-hand corner, what emotions are being called to the surface? What emotions are being activated, right? Okay, so I left you with the question yesterday of how do you know that you are right? How do you know that you are right if I say that you have certain emotions that are activated because of that picture? How do I know that this can evoke a small bit of sadness? Maybe a 1 or a 2 if there was a 0, right? Maybe a 2 then. Maybe I should have zeros up there. So it evokes none of that. Those are the things that you think about when you're rating, but here's the idea. If I am measuring your emotional intelligence, right? I'm measuring your emotional intelligence. How would I know that you are intelligent or not intelligent by your rating on this picture, right? Who's right? Who's right that has a 2 and not a 1 for sadness? Who's right? Who's right that evokes a 3 of happiness, not a 5 of happiness? Who's right? How do we know who's right? See? And what we use is, and this is the slide that I have it if you want to look at it. Oh, not that one. If you want to look at it while I'm talking, you can. Feel free to look at the slide while I'm talking. and it's the bottom one there, consensus, right? We can ask the target how they're feeling, right? But we can't ask a picture, right? We can ask an expert what emotions are those pictures. So an artist maybe would know the emotions, or the artists themselves would know the emotions that are being depicted in that picture, right? So I'm going to get a pillow there. I'm going to get a couple pillows there. So I'll let you read those, but it's by consensus. So when I collect all the data, let's say that I have 5,000 people who answered the question, and 3,800 said that emotion was a 2, 500 said it's a 3, and the rest of them said it's a 1. I'm going to go with the average number there, which actually might be something like a 1.78 or 2, or, whatever. The average was 1.98. The average might be. That's what I go with. All the people who answered that, there might be some crazies in there. It doesn't matter, right? Who said that picture is filled with sadness, 5 on everything. Might be some crazies in there, right? But we average it all in. Now, we wouldn't let somebody who answered 5 on everything, we would eliminate that, right? Because you obviously didn't put any thought into what you're doing. But that's how we know whether or not you have high levels of emotional intelligence. And then what we do is, again, these are examples of different ways that we rate the different branches of emotional intelligence. Not necessary for you to know, right? That is our measure. So remember, we were talking about measuring, and then we look at the outcomes here is all that we do. So we look at the outcomes for each one of those areas that we were measuring. So that would include the total score that you had for everything. That would include your total score for the experientials, perceiving and using together. It would also include a total for the strategic, which would include, what are those? Understanding, that's what I thought, and managing. Understanding and managing. And then it would include individual scores for perceiving, using, understanding, and managing. It would include all those individual scores. And that's what we see here. And so an individual would end up with bars, basically, or scores, right, that would be graphed out to demonstrate whether or not you're above average, below average, or somewhere in between on your emotional intelligence. Now, there are other ways to rate your emotional intelligence. You can go online, and I'm quite certain that you can find some good surveys that will measure your emotional intelligence. But you can see why this is a really good survey, because it takes a look at the complexities of a measure, the complexities of your emotional intelligence that come out in things other than simply answering a question, right? It comes out in other ways other than simply answering a question, even though you still have to give opinions on this in the same way, right? Okay, let's move on. I said I was going to get a pillow. Here are the benefits of individuals who have higher scores in emotional intelligence. So these are very similar. You're going to find out benefits are similar across the board when we develop any positive trait or any positive characteristic. You're going to see similar results for improvements. Why? Because what we're looking for is always the same outcome: good mental and physical health, right? And spiritual health, hopefully too, but that really is emotional health, right? So we're always looking at how healthy you are. If we're always looking at how healthy you are and we have success, emotional intelligence leads to success. Success means health. That's what success is. We live a long time. We're happier. We get better grades. All of those things that lend themselves to good mental and physical health. We call that well being. All emotional intelligence lends itself to mental and physical health or healthy well being. I'll let you look at those while I go and get a pillow that I said I was going to get just to square things away here on the scene. Just to square things away on the scene. And oh, that's not it. Oh, yeah, it is. Also, let me call up that page so I can read it to you. Oh, you know what? I think I. I updated the slides a little bit, and I didn't have the updated one, and I still don't. Ugh. Hmm. So that will give you a better idea of those scores because it just is a little, obviously, a little bit closer. And actually, that doesn't give you a complete idea because it doesn't show you all the way to the higher scores. So it probably doesn't give you a better idea. All right, so there are the benefits of EI. So take a look at that for a minute. Yeah, I'm still working on my pillow. I'll be right back. See how much nicer that PowerPoint is than the other one? So wasn't that worth those like 5 minutes of searching? I think it was. Okay, so there it is. I couldn't find of course I couldn't find it. All right, so higher scores. Higher scores in emotional intelligence, lower self-reports of engaging in violent or antisocial behavior. They are less impulsive. Obviously, if I'm able to regulate, I'm going to be less impulsive. They're less likely to try drugs or cigarettes. They endorse the idea that doing well in school is important. They have higher manager ratings of team leaders' effectiveness. So their managers rate them as more effective. It's negative related to speed at handling customer complaints. This is an interesting thing. Do you understand what that means? So, higher scores of emotional intelligence, as emotional intelligence goes up, the speed at which I handle your complaints goes down. Higher emotional intelligence, I spend more time with you. I'm more willing to listen to you. I'm not going to, get so worried or excited as soon as you're talking about, everyday concerns that you have as a mother or a wife with somebody at the bank, for example. They should be able to manage their emotions so that they are able to handle customer concerns, right? That's what a customer service employee is supposed to do. That's what they get paid for. Excuse me. Now, it doesn't mean that you can be belligerent, right, with customer service individual, but certainly it is part of your job to be able to handle somebody who is just, merely excited about problems that they have and not belligerent, right? And, and then the way that people are so completely woke that they can't handle anything, any criticism without completely shutting down, right? Or taking it personally. Those are perfect examples of an inability to manage my emotions. Let's take a closer look one more time at that managing of our emotions. Because that one really actually is the one that I think is so key to whatever's going on. So to our ability to be able to shuffle through life without always the dark cloud of depression or anxiety over our heads. So we see there on all the way to the right, we have managing emotions. And that includes managing your own emotions as well as managing your relationships. Looking at the bottom there, branch 4 in the managing emotions set of examples there, or set of definitions. It says the ability to be open to feelings both pleasant and unpleasant. The ability to monitor and reflect on emotions. So if you are only able to handle pleasant emotions, then you will have a very difficult time managing your emotions, and that will be lower scores on your emotional intelligence. Our job is not to eliminate unpleasant feelings. Our jobs are to handle them. Life is not filled with only pleasant feelings. We experience death. We experience trauma. We experience people who are mean to us, who are disloyal to us. We have all kinds of negative experiences. We are not going to eliminate those. So get used to them. Learn how to manage them. We are not going to have customers who are having a problem and the problem doesn't get resolved and they're going to be okay with that. It's just not going to happen. How do you manage pleasant and unpleasant feelings that you experience, and how do you manage them when you see them in others? Ability to monitor and reflect on your own emotions, ability to engage, prolong, or detach from an emotional state, ability to manage emotions in oneself and in others. How do you manage emotions in others? Well, clearly, we can make them feel better. We can give them a nice comment or compliment, right? And make them feel better. We can stop harassing them, right? We can stop stalking them. That probably would help individuals feel better. That's how we could manage their emotions. When we put pressures, and especially unreasonable pressures, on other people, we know the effect it has on them. So do you manage your emotions to get a positive outcome, to get a positive effect out of other people, right? Call it what you will. You can call it manipulation, but if I'm manipulating you for your benefit, do you mind? I don't know. In order to make you feel better, isn't that what our relationships really are all about, right? Our relationships are about, we engage in them to help us feel better, because we want to feel better about people and the things going on in our lives, and have explanations, right? And have other people, help us through. We manage our emotions with them so they can help us through as well, right? It's not really just for them. We don't manage a person to manipulate them for them. We help ourselves in the process. How many times am I going to go through these? One at a time. I said that there are other ways to measure emotional intelligence, and this is another way. I've got those actually backwards on there. They actually should, I think the one on the left should be on the right to start it. I'm just updating this just a little bit. Bear with me. Okay, here it comes. Okay, all right. So this is another survey that you can take or assessment that you can take. I talked about it. There's ways that you can score that assessment, and that will also give you information on the level of your emotional intelligence. As I said, I've got lots of slides here, and some of those slides will benefit you, and some of them are really more for the class. You can look this theory up, but the theory really is from the 1980s. So, to be perfectly honest with you, we really do not take a close look at theories that are related to positive outcomes. A lot of people would venture out or off of the beaten path. Let me give you an example. So, the beaten path for psychologists are those people that are highly scientific. And so, for example, somebody like Sam Harris, right? So Sam Harris might appreciate a look at intelligence from a very highly scientific way. But intelligence, so what did they do? They got the intelligence test is what they did. And what they found out was that a lot of the intelligence testing was biased and that there was a lot of misinformation in the intelligence testing. And so people would want to stick with the hard science. And only those people who cared about something beyond just the physical world would venture out and study something like intelligence or emotional intelligence. They're messy topics to talk about and think about. I was going to give you the example of Sam Harris. So Sam Harris is talking about, and his background is in, even though he talks about how neuropsychology affects behavior, he really is only looking at it from a physical standpoint. If you don't believe in or understand, for example, or study social aspects, literally social behavior, and understand that regardless of the chemistry really is secondary. The chemistry may demonstrate evidence for certain brain activation or evidence for why a certain area of the brain has been doesn't work correctly because of brain damage, for example, or Alzheimer's or drug use, right, where there's a deterioration of the brain. So looking at the physical brain and understanding brain chemistry does really give us a lot of information about the physical body and how it reacts to stimulus. So response, stimulus, conditions. So what is Sam Harris looking at? He's looking at chemical changes when we introduce what? A vaccine? Something synthetic? Something we couldn't care less about? I mean, not that we don't care about vaccines. I'm not saying that. We do care about our health. But what I'm saying is the vaccines don't contribute to our satisfaction with life. What does contribute to our satisfaction with life are all those ingredients that go into emotional intelligence. Like we started this whole series on. It isn't the intelligence factor. It's the emotional intelligence. It's the behavior. It's the social aspect. So anyone who is collecting information as a scientist and only cares about the chemical changes really has very little knowledge or very little impact on what goes on in our lives day to day. It really has very little impact. I mean, even when you think about how much study and research and dollars goes into vaccines, when I haven't had to worry about that since I was in third grade, probably. And that's the truth. I mean, I'm a healthy person. So why wouldn't we be studying what goes into a healthy person? But we put all that money and all that research into medicine curing the sick and never making people's lives better. So when I say, I have an appreciation for Sternberg venturing out into studying intelligence in ways that really aren't very tactile, right? In ways that you can't really measure them by feeling them or touching them, or by direct senses, right? It becomes very difficult. I have a lot of respect for people who do it. And you can look that up, Sternberg. But again, these are old because people don't want to venture out, because people want to study instead just the physical nature of the human being and nothing else. And we know, or study, even when they study emotions, it's the physical nature of the emotion. It's how much dopamine there is, or how much serotonin there is. It's the physical nature of the emotion, as opposed to the behavioral impacts, the behavioral responses, the behavioral consequences, the antecedents, all of those things, which can be supported with physical evidence, but certainly isn't the primary hypothesis or research question or interest of psychology, period. Are you interested in psychology because you want to know the chemical changes in the brain? No. No, of course not. Are you interested in psychology because you want to know what happens to a bone when you break it over and over again? No. No. You're interested in psychology because you want to know how it's going to help me today and then tomorrow. Now here is, you can see that this is a table, and this is I lopped off the credit there. This comes from my positive psychology book. I'll take a look at which one it is in just a minute. But actually, this research is from the 1980s. So you can see that you're not seeing very many current names on this. But what a great list of people who are intelligent. Are they the same thing as those who are creative? And are they the same thing as those who are wise? And are they the same thing as those who have sheer fame? And is there anyone on all four lists? And I see Oprah is on 3 lists. Oh no, she's not on the sheer fame list. She's on 2 lists. We've got, so you can look there and see, right? How many people are on more than one list? Looks like Jesus is only on 1 list. Da Vinci's on intelligent and creative, but not on wise. He had a really depressing, horrible life. So he's not high on wise, and he's not high on sheer fame. So interesting. Who is wise? Characters of a wise person include, let me tell you, the characteristics of a wise person include those people who can apply good reason and logic, that they have an understanding of human nature, thoughtfulness, and fairness. They learn from their mistakes. They place value on ideas, not on things. They have a long-term approach before acting or speaking. They think before they act or speak, and they determine whether or not it's part of their long-term goals. They retain information from experience, and they have a willingness to change their own mind. They are perceptive. They use their intuition. They see thought in things, like that picture, right? And they know how to read between the lines. They have a balance between and among interests, their own self-interest, the interests of others, and the environmental demands. That's what we're talking about. Emotional intelligence is a great balance. It is being able to manage yourself in a way that you approach or avoid things to keep things balanced and moving. When I have high anxiety, when I have high levels of depression, I simply cannot maintain my balance in life. Okay, that's all that I have. I'm going to take an hour break and then I'm going to be back here in about an hour. This is Dr. Annette Feravich, and this is the Critical Thinking Classroom. We did not summarize everything, but we did get to wisdom, which was our day yesterday, which we were supposed to talk about, right? Wisdom. And so we're just about ready to wrap this up. I'm going to show you some ways that we measure wisdom, and then we're wrapping up emotional intelligence. Thanks for joining me in the classroom. I am Dr. Annette Feravich. I'm the teacher, and this is the Critical Thinking Classroom with healthy mind, body, spirit. Thanks.